The views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
Hey Calgary, I'm Kevin Chorney. It's December 5th, and this is Calgary Now. Recently, Calgary police wrapped up an intense week-long campaign to remind drivers of the dangers of distracted driving. 465 summonses were issued for infractions including handheld cell phones, texting, using electronics like laptops and cameras, reading, and even grooming while driving. With 665 collisions this year caused by distracted driving, the police felt the media blitz and undercover police officers issuing tickets were needed to educate drivers of the dangers of distracted driving. Yet, anecdotally, it seems drivers aren't really getting the message at all. People freely admit to talking and texting while driving, claiming they don't do it often, or it will only take a second, or they just have to make that phone call. Many people blame our culture of reliance on smartphone technology, our self-importance, the ease of using technology, and the numerous distractions drivers face daily. So, what is it going to take for drivers to keep both hands on the wheel and eyes on the road? So is it just me, or has the quality of drivers on Calgary streets declined steadily over the past decade? Coincidentally, mobile technology has developed substantially over the past 10 years, and not surprisingly, so too have our nasty driving habits. Many cars now come equipped with a plethora of potential distractions built right in, from DVD players to GPS services. The smartphone is not the only culprit anymore. Perhaps the bigger issue is now why we're distracted, not so much how we're distracted, and why we feel the incessant need to stay entertained and perform multiple tasks while behind the wheel. If we're being honest here, chances are most of us at one time or another have been guilty of distracted driving. My guest and I are sitting down to discuss Calgary's bad driver habits in just a moment. To start us off, let's check out the rant pack.
Distracted driving is going to be a problem wherever you are. It doesn't matter whether it's Calgary, Edmonton, Delhi, Bangkok, Shanghai. The thing that bothers me most is if we're really against distracted driving, why don't we make the $172 fine a half a demerit each time you get one? Because the up step from that, I believe, is 4 demerits or something like that, which is a massive hit against your insurance. So that's the reason the cops didn't want to issue it in the first place, and that's the reason that we brought in this distracted driving law. So I think that if we're really going to fight it, we have to give some sort of demerit for the $172 ticket.
Hey Calgary, thanks for joining us. Tonight we have Inspector Dean LaGrange from the Calgary Police Service and AMA driving instructor Ron Wilson. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being here. Real quick, Ron, I think I missed your role. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your role is with AMA exactly?
I'm a driver education manager. I'm also a driving instructor.
Perfect. Communications guy.
I do talk to the media sometimes, yes.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And what's your role with the CPS inspector?
Currently I'm in command of the traffic section, which is responsible for traffic education enforcement throughout the city, check stop, commercial truck vehicle enforcement, and so on.
Perfect. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So guys, I'm going to start it off, maybe get a little philosophical. Why is it that, it seems to be human nature for people to forego safety in the name of self-indulgence? And I'll explain what I mean. I think back to like 50s, big block engines, old vehicles with no seatbelts in the car, for example. Is that human nature?
Well, it's hard to argue against that,
Yeah.
Kevin. However, I think as technology improves and we learn more, I think that people generally want to do the right thing and protect themselves and others around them. So as technology improves, back then when we didn't have seatbelts,
Yeah.
now you see most people, it's in the high 90s at the compliance rate. So,
Well, I'd hope so. If you're not wearing it for safety, you're definitely going to be wearing it to get rid of that annoying beep in the car,
exactly.
keeping you occupied. Is safety an afterthought, you think, Ron, at times?
I think what it comes down to, a lot of these things that are problems with drivers is they don't know the risk of driving. They don't realize how risky it is. As was already stated, I think people want to do the right thing, but a lot of people don't think of driving as risky. And it's actually one of the most dangerous things we do every day.
They say that, well, they shouldn't say they say, it's fact that, you have a better chance of dying on the road than you do a lot of other more, what would be perceived dangerous activities, correct?
Absolutely.
Any idea on the numbers as to how many fatalities we see in Canada?
In Canada, you're looking at about 2,200 fatalities a year. In Alberta, you're looking at almost an average of 1 a day, unfortunately.
So you would hope that people would be pretty quick to get on board with safety. Not necessarily the case, though, is it?
Well, no. I mean, nobody likes being told what to do. I mean, every year it seems there's more laws being legislated.
Yeah.
Let's face it. If we didn't have to tell people not to kill each other, we wouldn't need a murder law. But again, distracted driving is a new technology. People, I don't want to say abuse it, but people get used to that and try and combine it with driving skills, which obviously requires a larger portion of your attention.
So are people lacking common sense nowadays? Is that what's happening with drivers?
I think just playing off what was said, a lot of people just have developed habits. You'll see a lot of people walking down the street by traffic, texting on their phone. And, so
which to me displays zero common sense.
So it's people have gotten into the habits of always having their media there, unfortunately, and so some people have a tough time putting it down, I suppose.
The current fine is $172 for distracted driving. Is that significant enough? Does that number need to be bigger?
Well, we certainly support adding demerits to this because, let's face it, when this came in 2 years ago, September 2011, it was similar in thought to when the seatbelt legislation came into place. Let's give people a chance to comply with this law. Those that don't, we felt maybe it wasn't a requirement for the demerits. That would obviously impact them financially long after the ticket. Sure. That 2 years have passed since the legislation has been in place, and it's not having the same compliance rate as say seatbelts. So we need to look at further measures to give this law more teeth and to deter people from curb this action.
Absolutely. Would you agree, Ron, that maybe demerits, it's time that demerits are levied against drivers?
Well, we support the government of Alberta revisiting distracted driving legislation. There isn't currently any research that shows that demerits help with distracted driving, so there's that part of it too.
It's kind of a rock and hard place. It's a tough one, though. I mean,
it is. I mean, while there's no research to back that up, we do know that when a police officer standing at your door, car door, gives you a ticket, it certainly has more impact than a photo radar ticket.
You know, as a driver who's been ticketed on both photo radar and an officer at my window, absolutely, because I mean, there is demerits that come along with your offense.
Right. So that deterrent is there.
And that's what research shows, is that the best deterrent is when enforcement is used and the person is getting the ticket.
Adverse weather and distracted driving is just, it seems to me like just a bonehead combination, but it happens. I mean, if you look at the roads nowadays, it's been a terrible week for weather, as it is. I'm wondering if maybe legislation needs to lean harder on those who would be using their cell phones or watching DVDs or doing whatever they're doing to be distracted in a vehicle during such adverse weather conditions. That to me screams irresponsibility. Your thoughts? I mean, do you think there's more that needs to get out there for people to realize, look, I mean, you're on an icy road, how can you possibly lack that common sense?
Well, whether it's an icy road or a dry road, I think you need your full attention on the road when you're driving. So the risk is always there regardless of the weather conditions, amplified a little bit more with less traction, but it's still a risk. You need your mind on driving.
Oh, clearly. Is there a push though for it?
Well, there isn't. I mean, we're talking different degrees of risk. It's risk, period. Yeah. And like Ron said, your full attention is required when you're driving, but if you look at dry roads versus icy roads, maybe speed increases on dry roads, so which is more dangerous, higher speed or slippery conditions?
Which is more dangerous, higher speed or slippery conditions? I imagine they're both, they can be potentially fatal.
Hard to differentiate between the two, really, especially when you add texting or grooming or reading into that.
Yeah. So. A lot of vehicles, essentially all modern day vehicles are built with safety in mind. They're built with airbags all over the vehicle, reinforced roll cage, what have you. Do people maybe have this false sense of security in these vehicles, these pseudo-invincibility about them driving these vehicles that potentially lends them to, well, I can text and drive. If I get in an accident, I'll be fine. The person next to me, well, they're not thinking about that. But you understand what I'm saying? Do they maybe adopt that mentality?
I think that a lot of people think just on the first note, I'm not going to get in a crash because I'm a good driver. Nothing's going to happen to me. That's what a lot of drivers think. They don't intentionally go out there thinking I'm going to have a crash today, or I'm going to get pulled over and get a ticket, or whatever the case. They think they're a good driver, a lot of drivers.